could slip into financial panic and a distressing scenario would unfold. More banks could fail, including some in your community. The stock market would drop even more, which would reduce the value of your retirement account. The value of your home could plummet. Foreclosures would rise dramatically. And if you own a business or a farm, you'd find it harder and harder, expensive to get credit. More businesses will close their doors and millions of Americans could lose their jobs. God bless America. Then Obama comes in, change. When he says, we want even more money at the banks. Economists across the spectrum have warned that if we don't act immediately, millions more jobs will be lost and national unemployment rates will approach double digits. More people will lose their homes and their health care, and our nation will sink into a crisis that at some point may be unable to be reversed. Different mask, same face. Be afraid, be very afraid. The big bad monster's coming now that we've invented him. Economic crisis. And just a puppet. And his economic team, people like Larry Summers, Paul Volcker, Tim Geithner, they're straight from the very institutions that created the crisis, and they've been placed in positions to solve the crisis, which means giving more and more money to the banks that they represent. Trillions of dollars. And they're talking about it being the bigger crisis than the 1930s. In many ways, on many levels, I think that's absolutely right. What they want, and I've been saying this since November now, what they want, and we're two-thirds there, don't want to be the bringer of bad news, but, you know, let's face it, was to crash the economy first of all and create a massive problem. Stage two is for those that have created the problem to come into government and hurl enormous amounts of cuckoo land money at the problem, because what they wanted to do in stage two is empty the weapons of government to respond to the crisis. And once those weapons, those guns have been emptied in terms of response possibilities, then they want to crash it here and crash it in a way that there can be no government response. They want to create absolute chaos on so many levels so that the people say, save us, do something. And the do something will bring in this centralized, global, fascist, Orwellian state. This, as a result of it. Not just a financial crisis, they want wars as well. They want to, first of all, destroy America, because if you want a world government, then you can't have superpowers in the world that can say no to the world government financially and militarily. So as I've been saying for years now, what we're seeing in America is using America to destroy America. It's being destroyed militarily because it's fighting on so many fronts, and financially, I was there for 2 months recently, that country is on the brink of financial catastrophe. Not just a crisis, catastrophe. With what's going on there, which has not hit the public arena yet. And the other thing they want in problem, reaction, solution is people to riot and be violent in response to what's going on, because then they've got a problem that they can offer the solution to, which is increases in the police state to meet the problem of violent reaction of the public to the problems they've created, and also to justify putting people into these concentration camps, you can only call them, holding centers they're called, which exist all over the world, particularly in America, under an organization called FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency. Again, people around the conspiracy research world have been talking about this now for 10 years, and it's coming to pass. And you know, I don't believe in violence. I will not be violent. I will not be violent. I don't care what the situation is. I do want to be violent. I'm not going to add my energy to that crap. But a lot of people would be in response to this, and to do that, you need to get rid of their guns. That's why when Hitler came in, he wanted to disarm the population, because then a big problem of resistance had gone. It's Rahm Emanuel that is now leading the campaign in America to take away more and more guns from the population, because he knows that an armed population prepared to use them in certain situations makes them much more difficult to control. But I would say this, Martin Luther King, the limitation of riots, moral questions aside, is that they cannot win, and their participants know it. Hence, rioting is not revolutionary but reactionary, because it invites defeat. It involves an emotional catharsis, but it must be followed by a sense of futility. And what we need is not to riot, not to be violent, not even to go in mass protests, so be my guest if people want to do that. But they're not frightened of protests, this gang. They're terrified of us not complying with our own enslavement. And when we stop doing that, they've lost their power. No violence necessary. They want us to be violent. Inside job, problem, reaction, solution, 9/11. Won't go into all that now, but it's been well documented. But another classic one. And interestingly, 1997, the Grand Chessboard, Brzezinski book. Moreover, as America becomes an increasingly multicultural society, it may find it more difficult to fashion a consensus on foreign policy issues, except in the circumstances of a truly massive and widely perceived direct external threat. What was it? 3 years later? 4 years later? Thank you. Massive external threat, which has justified so much. I love that. So David Dees is a great artist. Anything like this in this presentation comes from David Dees, a brilliant artist who portrays real powerful statements in pictures like this. Jet fuel, that's a good one. These are buildings, by the way, in other parts of the world that burned incredibly more intensely than the Twin Towers, and none of them fell. That one seems to be falling, but it's not. It's the way the building is actually built. There you go. There you go. Put that where I can see it. Okay, we're not doing bad. There you go. Reichstag fire, which Hitler did. Blamed someone else for it, justified the takeover of the state as a result of it. Same thing, problem, reaction, solution. Again, Saddam Hussein was the guy. We're going to go into Iraq because of Saddam Hussein. This is Donald Rumsfeld, the defense secretary at the time of the invasion of Iraq, meeting Saddam Hussein in 1983 to arrange for Reagan-Bush administration to ship chemical and biological weapons for use against the Iranians. This is an American mainstream newspaper report from 2002. Donald Rumsfeld, the US Defense Secretary and one of the most strident critics of Saddam Hussein, met the Iraqi president in 1983 to ease the way for US companies to sell biological and chemical weapons, including anthrax and bubonic plague cultures, according to newly declassified government documents. Again and again, you see people creating the problem who then become the people to solve the problem. He was on the board of a European engineering giant called ABB in 2000 when they sold nuclear equipment to North Korea. He then becomes defense secretary and says North Korea is a danger because it's got nuclear equipment. Alongside problem, reaction, solution comes what I call the totalitarian tiptoe. Very simple. You're going there to Z, but you're at A. And if you go in one leap, you know the change is going to be so vast, people are going to say, what's going on? So you go in as big a jump as you can, but you try not too big a jump that so many people will start to ask questions. And each jump is promoted and projected as unconnected to all the others. That's how the European Union, a centralized dictatorship now, was totalitarian tiptoed out of a free trade area. 75% of laws in Britain now originate in the European Union. And the European Union pass a law, a British Parliament or any other European Parliament pass a law, doesn't matter, that one takes precedent. They want the same in America with the North American Union, which Obama is going to be pushing. Fascism, you really think it would be this obvious? The stepping stone approach is what's got us this far, where so many stepping stones have now been made that it is becoming obvious to anyone with a mind. I'll quickly go through this because there's so much to get through, but it's like I say, I wish I had hours. The other coordinate is to understand that they want people to be a believer. They want people to believe in something, because once you have a belief system that is rigid, then you become less of a problem. They want religious belief systems, political belief systems, racial belief systems, self-identity belief systems, anything that puts you in a prison of the mind, because you'll then filter through this process of the way the neurons fire in the brain, you will filter reality through the belief system. Religions. In the end, religions are invariably, the major religions are worshipping the same force. It's not explained like that, but that's what goes on. Again, out of Atlantis and Lemuria, and then those civilizations that followed, the worshipping of the moon goddess and the sun god, the worshipping of the moon and the sun, was prevalent. And it manifested in various religions, not least from this part of the world, which, if you think about it, is the religion factory. Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Hinduism, all came out of this part of the world, these major religions. And when you strip them down, they are invariably sun and moon worshipping religions. So in Babylon, they worshipped the Queen Semiramis, the sun goddess, Nimrod, known as Baal or Bel, the sun god, and Tammuz, who was the